Hello, my friends. How's everyone doing today? It's Carpo on a Sunday morning. It's about noonish on a Sunday. It's Mother's Day today, so happy Mother's Day to all you mothers out there, and to my own mom if she happens to be watching, and my own wife if she happens to be watching. I would say the two most important women in my life, and the funny thing about that is that the only two women in my life. Like, I grew up with brothers, and I only have boys, or I grew up with a brother rather, and I have three boys. So there's not a lot of women I've been exposed to in my life, but luckily the ones I have are wonderful, wonderful people. I mean, people say that almost as if I don't know, like an obligatory Mother's Day type thing. My mom, she today was like, I don't want to do anything for Mother's Day. She came by yesterday and hung out for a bit. And she's like, I don't like making a day where people feel obligated to visit their moms. And in a lot of cases that is true. Oh, gotta call your mom and whatnot. But it's also kind of like own the day. If there's a day dedicated to you, then take it. But I'm the same way with Father's Day. I'm just like, oh, it's just another day, But anyhow, who's that? Somebody here? Nope, it's the neighbors. Never know if somebody's going to show up right when I start a video or whatnot. It seems like every time I do, the phone rings, something happens. It's just the way life goes, and life's been pretty busy lately, a little bit hectic, and I've been trying to kind of bring myself back into my discussions about information, or, I always enjoy that word, information. It's putting things in formation for us. But it's, I was just thinking about this issue, not an issue, but this research I've done on viruses, or phages, rather. And there are more phages in the world than all other animals and insects and bacteria combined. Phages are just, there are viruses and everything. And I made a video about 4 or 5 years ago, and it was called "Are Bacteria Our Gods?" And it was kind of of course, a joke, but in a way it wasn't. I said, how are we to know that the most intelligent organisms aren't the smallest, and that they just evolved us to transport them? Before I go any further, I'll say, they said that the Earth, I can't remember where I read this, the Earth fits something like 18 of the 19 or 17 of the 18 conditions of being a living organism. The only one that the Earth doesn't possess that, would complete it as an organism would be reproduction. And I thought about this, and I thought, well, if viruses and fungi had evolved together in order to create intelligent, capable human beings that could create spaceships and launch them deep into interstellar space, maybe the evolution to us leaving the planet is the reproductive phase. Were the seeds or whatnot. It's fascinating stuff to me. Viruses are not just something scary that make us sick, and I wanted to make this video in detail about how these things work. And the more I think about doing a video like that, I give up now. Like, I used to do a lot of research, and I would read up a bunch of articles and get some clips and info together so I could know how to convey this message to people. And then I realized, what's the point? It's like there are so many people out there with so many informative videos. And oh, hey, Spider. Spider just landed on my table here. So many different people out there informing. It's like, who's a guy on the internet just rambling about these things? In other words, I don't get compensated, let's say, for my research time and all this. So as a human, I want to be able to go educate. It's like something that's a passion to me is sharing information with people. But I haven't found a way to make that really work yet without feeling obligated to. Let's say, even if I did say, was I getting paid for making videos, and I could take the time, then there's the issue of the patience of putting everything together and editing a nice video. But this isn't about that. I'm using that as kind of an example of another component that makes it difficult to talk about these things, besides the one that people just don't care. In other words, if you sit and you spew facts and figures, most people, their eyes glaze over and they don't care. We don't, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's not that people don't care. It's just that when I bring out something that I've learned, like a really deep scientific thing, and try to explain it to someone, even if I don't understand all the concepts, which I rarely understand all the concepts, But using certain terms, I forget that people don't, you know, they're like, what is that? You know, how does that work? Or, you know, I've never heard of this before. And, oh, then you have to go back and give a pre-explanation of how these things operate. And the worst part about that is that this is what separates us into categories of educated and uneducated, to give the extreme version. And not that anyone's superior or more or less, because the thing that I've learned about life is the information that I know, you know, I know all the things that I've, you know, taken the time to educate myself on. But I'm still not, I'm not arrogant. I don't think that that's the final answer. I'm like, I'm just learning as I go. I do not consider myself a super smart person. I see these guys, these intellectual guys that, you know, and I'm not talking about them, because there's a difference between using big words, fancy college words, and actually having real world applied knowledge. I think that when you have certain knowledge, it's very difficult to share with other people. And this isn't just with viruses related. This is just everything. Like, when I find something that I think will help in life and help people, I try to share that. But every individual has their own experience, and I know that might not work for everybody. And I've learned over the years that everyone has their own intelligence that goes so far beyond what we know. Like, I've known people that have absolutely no real world like education, people who maybe have dropped out in junior high or earlier, but that are so damn smart because they understand things. They have street smarts. They have a certain wisdom about other people or whatnot. In other words, if you don't spend all your time learning book smarts, then you learn world smarts, street smarts. And those are more crucial in the long run if you're not trying to climb some corporate ladder. So I've tried to keep myself in the middle. And so I realize that I'm kind of all over the place here talking about viruses and the aspect of why I don't talk about these things more often. And I guess I just wanted to kind of get across that I'd love to do more science-oriented videos, but I feel like I am not qualified to do so. I can share certain ideas, but it's just not my specialty. You know, there was a comment section, I think it was on Facebook this morning, where somebody was talking about a diet, a particular diet. I can't remember the doctor's name, Kubi. It was a 4-letter name, I think, but the miracle alkaline diet that, and this guy was saying, you know, of course, he's like, yeah, I went on this diet and checked it out and it was phenomenal, you know. He's like, all you got to do is just try it for 72 hours and you'll see. And it's like, well, you can't just, you know, start a diet for 72 hours and say that that's evidence, because somebody else was asking for a link. They're like, well, are you, the only point that I was trying to make with this person, because he's trying to educate people on this diet that's great. And he talked about how eating these foods, you know, will make your body alkaline. And somebody pointed out to him that eating alkaline foods won't make you alkaline. Your stomach's acidic. Your stomach adjusts its own pH. And rather than taking the information and having the guy go, oh, okay, so maybe there's more to it than just this alkaline acidic body thing. No, he continued to, you know, say, well, you just don't know. You just don't understand. You just have to try this diet. I've seen it myself, you know. You can read all day and you won't learn a damn thing unless you actually apply it. And in many cases, that's true, but we were both trying to explain to him that placebo and anecdotal evidence are not, you know, enough to prove that something is what it is. That you think it might be, that a diet may be this fad. You know, I've seen so many frickin' fads come and go that, you know, I'm cautious about what people say. You know, the idea that I grew up thinking that eating too much sugar caused diabetes, right? Recently, I watched this documentary where they were saying that you know, it's not sugar itself. It's more meats and fats, and the way that these certain compounds attract fats more and clog arteries and whatnot. But the diabetes, it's not just sugar. Your body can't you know, you have insulin issue, but that's not directly related to sugar. I'm not saying that eating a lot of sugar is good. I mean, it could exacerbate it, but just eating a lot of sugar in your life isn't going to give you diabetes. And the same thing with, you know, but people continue to believe the old things that they've learned. And this is the same way with viruses, like what this video is about. You know, bacteria and viruses have been seen as our enemy. Look at what we've done to ourselves through finding these miracle cures, like all of a sudden we have penicillin. And I wanted to mention this in this video somewhere, so I should do it now. Penicillin is a phenomenal medicine, and it worked great. It's, you know, you could get a cut, and you could die from that cut before penicillin. Well, we all know what that's created. It hasn't created really, but the abuse and overuse of it, which is a side effect we couldn't know would happen. It's caused superbugs like MRSA and whatnot. I saw a chart earlier where it says by the year 2050, where the chart of cancer, deaths from cancer and deaths from resistant infections like medicine resistant, it will exceed the cancer deaths. So more people will die from basic infections by 2050 than they will from cancer, which doesn't really surprise me too much as far as the cancer aspect, because I'm hoping we'll be able to tackle that in better ways. And yes, there are certain diets that can improve and diminish cancer and diminish other diseases, but there's also placebo effect, and that's what gets thrown into the middle of all of this. The idea that, like, for example, taking these antibiotics doesn't just kill the good bacteria, or bad bacteria, it kills the good bacteria with it. So a lot of people who take them end up with stomach problems for a long time afterwards, because antibiotics themselves kill everything. The thing is, phages, or the viruses that attack bacteria, you can select specific phages and actually inject them into a person who has an infection, and they will attack just those bacteria, just the ones that you want to attack. And phage treatment, if you look it up, PHAGE, in Europe, they've been using it for a long time. The U.S. stopped using it because we wanted to use penicillin, and there's a whole history of, let's just put it this way, there's money to be made in antibiotics. There's no money to be made in viruses because they're not patented, and our whole medicine system in this country is just fucked up, pardon my language, but it's so beyond fucked up. It is crooked, corrupt, and definitely not looking out for your best interest. So if you want to be a healthy person, do your own research. Don't expect your doctor to know a goddamn thing. I saw a group of doctors during, it was a meeting, like a city meeting or a state legislature meeting, and they had like these 6 or 7 doctors who were arguing against this continuing education. And I think what they said was that the state just wanted 7 hours of nutritional education for every 5-year period or something. So something like equivalent to an hour a year. And these doctors were adamantly fighting against this. And I thought, it's funny, they probably spent more time, these doctors, going to this court meeting and dealing with all this crap than they would actually during their time as a doctor going to these courses. But maybe they could learn something, because doctors are not taught to give a shit about your health as far as what you eat. I'm not saying all doctors don't, and I'm not one of these anti-doctors, and I'm sure as hell not an anti-vaxxer, because those people who still claim that vaccines cause autism, all of this, who are still buying into that old bullshit hype that's been, proven non-legitimate over and over. We need to really look at things again and realize that the medical industry does not have your best interest at heart, and they're going to lie to you to sell their bullshit. But the alternative medicine community is just as fucking corrupt. And these super cures that they're selling you, and quantum pendants and healing bracelets and whatever else it is. I'm sorry, but New Age quackery has gotten into proportions where I feel like I have to speak out. And it's funny because my wife knows this. Whenever she sees something that relates to New Age quackery, she shows it to me. And sure enough, these pendants, like the one I made a video about the other day, these Q-Wave pendants, they're $200 each, and you wear them around your neck, and they don't explain how they work, because they don't work. It's all placebo effect. And hey, I've heard people say the argument of, hey, if it works and it makes you think it's true, then it's good enough. I say, hey, that's true, but you shouldn't have to spend your hard-earned money on this, trying to, kill bad vibes with some stupid bracelet. I mean, I have mixed feelings about all of that when it comes to the whole chakra thing and star signs, reading charts. It's not that I'm unaware of them. I've studied my own charts, and I have, a detailed astrology breakdown book where I went and cross-referenced all my moons and my planets, and it's fascinating, but it doesn't help me. And that's the one thing I learned, that it's kind of like, I really apply that to all the things I learn in life. It may be some great mystery that people are out there sharing. Hey, did you know that this is the truth about this subject, and this is the truth about this subject? And I say, how does that serve you? That's always my question. Is it working for you? Are you using that in your life? Or is it just a way to say, for sometimes it's like pointing the finger. Say, look at all these companies trying to screw us. and I agree with a lot of it. It's funny because I play the devil's advocate, if you will, and with my friend, like my friend Tim was visiting the other day, or I went to visit him for his birthday, and we rode bikes down to Portland, and we're sitting along the river shore at night, and we were having this long discussion, which it wasn't a debate. It was me playing against myself, rather saying, well, this is what I was explaining to him, Jordan Peterson's position on differences between sexes and the racial differences that we know that exist, and how people use that and twist that for their own ends to say, look, there's superior races, or men are superior to women. And my explanation was, I said, it was a don't shoot the messenger type thing. I was saying, science has discovered these things, but nobody wants to talk about it because they're afraid of offending each other. And he was thinking that he knows I wasn't in support of it, but he was trying to argue his point that just because differences exist, it doesn't mean we need to talk about it. And I said, that's the thing. We need to talk about everything. We need to get everything out on the table, all the ways we truly feel. And he says, why? Because that just continues the division. And I was like, I don't think it continues the division. I think it brings it out into the open so we can deal with it. Like racism. It was always there, and it's still there. You can't just sweep it under the carpet with the guise of we're just tolerant now. And, it's more than just people don't like another color of skin. It's a cultural difference between us. Huge cultural differences. And like him and I both agreed, because he was telling me skin is, color doesn't mean shit. He says, I feel closer to some people, many people in other cultures and races than I do of my own fellow man. And I said, so do I. In fact, I feel closer to many cultures than I do to many white cultures, such as Russians. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with Russians, don't get me wrong. There is a stereotype associated with being Russian. But I've worked in construction with a lot of Russians, and a lot of Russians fit that stereotype. The ones that I've met in my life so far have been arrogant, rude, condescending, and pushy, and snide, and that's just my experience. But all the Mexicans I've worked with in construction, almost all of them have been respectable, on time, do quality work. And so, please, don't get me wrong, I'm not generalizing whole cultures. I'm saying that if I didn't know better, that experience could lead me to believe that a whole culture is somehow corrupt. This is how racism forms. It's not through just seeing the color of someone's skin. It's through our experiences with not understanding other people, and that's xenophobia. And that brings up a lot of very touchy issues. I've decided in my life that I want to talk about controversial stuff whenever it comes up. That not just for the sake of talking about it, but for the sake of not hiding from it. If a subject comes up, nothing is taboo to me. I'll talk about anything, and it's I think important. There are certain subjects that might make me uncomfortable, of course, and a lot of people who make me uncomfortable to talk with some things about. But I think that we need to put everything out on the table, literally out in the open. Tell ourselves, that there's more, that it's everything from the race issue to the fad diets to understanding phages and new medicine treatments. All the things that I've mentioned are just basically tied together only by the thread of confusion. The fact that we've been lied to for so long, and we're still being lied to by so many people, that everybody, it seems like, is out to get us. And this is the exact reason why I feel it's so important to attack, not physically, but to pin down and point out any of the charlatans, thieves, liars, and the corruption in the world. We accept it in politics. In other words, when a politician says something, there are studies to show that almost everyone understands that what they said isn't really what they said, and that people find it to be the norm to have to dissect what a person said and say, oh, that's just politics. But, that bleeds into every aspect of our society. When people are condescending and they lie to us, when our bosses or our employees lie, stealing from your, employees' paychecks or stealing from your employer, all these different things, there are certain values that I think we can all share. And therefore, and I've said this before, and some people are offended by the idea, is that shame people who we find to be of poor values. And these, you know, somebody will always say, well, who are you to determine poor values? And I say, I'm not. I can only determine my values. If I'm the only one that's shaming somebody and nobody else is, then maybe I'm the one who's wrong. But if we as a society collectively shame the people who deserve it, that's how things change. In other words, all the crap that goes on in Hollywood with all this, you know, the sexist Me Too movement and all this has always been going on. It's just that an avalanche happens where somebody speaks out and everybody feels like they should too. People tend to follow in groups, and people are afraid to expose themselves and to talk about certain things. I think everything needs to be talked about, in personal and in private and in social life, all of these things. So, yeah, join me in talking about everything that's wrong with the world. No, that's where I draw the line, you know. It's important to maybe call out the bullshit and the bullshit artists, but to sit and complain about the government all day or what's going on with the Illuminati, these types of things, these are non-productive, because unless you're able to actually call out individuals and you have, you know, something... I could give you a list of a dozen people who I think are complete frauds that I get emails from, these groups, these special groups that you can go on these 5-day cruises on the Nile and find your place in the universe. Every single one of the emails, I get at least 1 or 2 a week from this group. And they always say something like, you know, you're looking for your true self. Oh, do you feel confused sometimes? You know, it's like this typical, it's fishing is what it is. You're fishing for people's discomfort in life. If you were just to admit that everyone is this way, and it's not going to go away just by taking a class, that you may be able to go out there and go to take this course, and naturally, if you've spent all this money and you're eating these beautiful meals and on this boat and talking about spirituality, of course you're going to feel good for a while. And that'll last for a bit, but it always fades. You need to find that within yourself. All of us do. And that means confronting our truths. If we're hiding from what we truly believe and we're afraid to express ourselves to the world, then no matter what we say on the outside or the fake smile we keep up, you know, it's like it'll eat away at us. So, you know, talk about shit. Expose things that are important to you. Hell, make a YouTube video, you know. Even though I had my other channel deleted, I'm still sitting here making videos because it's important to me to express myself. It's what I do, you know. I like to. It's, you know, whatever, for better or worse, it's who I am. And so, yeah, that's this video. It's gotten pretty long and I kind of rambled a bit, but that's what I do best. Talk to y'all later. Peace.